I'm going to show you how to make a custom knee ascender for tree climbing. Okay, what you're going to need is an ascender, some elasticated cord, some load-bearing cord, and a couple of accessory carabiners. For those that don't know, a knee ascender is used for climbing vertically up a rope using a foot ascender on one foot and then this device floating at knee height on the other leg, which allows you to walk up the rope. Okay, so the way we're going to make this is we're going to take a Petzl Pro Small, because this is a really nice compact ascender, but you can use a multitude of other ascenders on the market. We're going to take some Dyneema Core 5mm cord, and we're going to splice this into an eye to eye, so that one end girth hitches on the bottom of the ascender and the other end girth hitches onto a carabiner, and this clips onto the loop on your boot. And then for the elasticated part, to keep it up in the air, we're going to use some 4mm shock cord, which is going to tie onto the top of this. It's going to run through an accessory carabiner that clips onto your chest harness, and then it's going to run back down and terminate on the ascender. So first things first is we're going to start the process of making this eye to eye. If you want to do it even easier, you can obviously take a piece of load-bearing cord and tie it into 2 knots, 1 knot on the ascender and 1 knot down on the accessory biner. But we're going to do this with splices because it makes much more compact and a much cleaner setup. To splice this Dyneema, what we're going to do is we're going to extract the core, and we're going to do a locking brummel on one side, attach this to the foot loop on our boot with the carabiner, and then we're going to work out what length measurement we need, and then we're going to splice the opposite side of it. Okay, so to do a locking brummel, we're going to need a sharp knife and a fid and some electrical tape. The first thing I'm going to do is take a bit of electrical tape, and I'm going to put it around the end of the cover, and this is literally just to stop it from fraying. Like that. I'm going to take the sharp knife and remove the end of it. So what we're going to do is, we could remove the core from this completely and splice a locking brummel with both ends. But what we're going to do is, to save us removing the core completely, is we're going to do a single-ended locking brummel. And we're going to start with our berry measurement. So this is 5mm Dyneema. We're going to measure back 20 times the diameter, which means that we're going to measure back 10 centimeters, make a mark, and now we have to work out the eye size we need. So this is going to choke onto this accessory biner. So I'm going to form a girth hitch, clip this on to my marking, keep working it through. There we have our first mark for the berry. I'm going to mark onto the opposite side, like this. And now undo this girth hitch. So now what we're left with is this piece of Dyneema with our berry length and our eye size marked. So take your splicing fid and we're going to go to the second mark and we're going to pinch this hollow braid, the Dyneema, and we're going to pass this fid all the way through the center. So this has got 12 strands in it, so ideally you want to work out that you've got 6 strands on one side, 6 strands on the other. So I'm going to pass this through in this direction, feed your tail through, pull it back, and this loop is going to pop all the way through. And we're going to do exactly the same with the second point up here. Make sure that we've got 6 strands on each side. And I'm going to do exactly the same. Pass this through. Perform this splice. Now, what we've got is we've got 2 inverted points. What we're going to do is take the top point and we need to pass this center section through. So we're going to keep turning this inside out, utilizing our fid. So essentially keep going in the direction which we were originally going. And we pass it all the way through until that second section comes through. And we're going to do exactly the same. We're going to pass this, we're going to pass the middle back through. And what you'll see is these 2 sections are going to slide together like this. And now you've got the eye of your splice formed. So we're going to load this up. And now what we're going to do is about 1 rope diameter down from this crossover, we're going to bury our tail. So we're going to just take a simple wire fid, open up these strands, so we're going all the way through the middle, exit where we put that mark, and now we're going to capture that piece of tail in here and feed it all the way back through. Now what we can do is fan out the last 10 mil. So like that, and we're just going to use our knife and cut it off at a smooth angle, and then when we load up the eye, it sucks it all the way back in, and there we have our first eye formed. Now what we're going to do is take the cover and milk that all the way back over this splice. There we go, to that point. And we're going to whip this at the end, but for now we're just going to leave this as is. And now we're going to do the opposite side. Now that we've spliced one side of this rope, what we're going to do is tie a girth hitch. This is a really nice compact girth hitch, and install it onto your accessory beaner, and we're going to work out the length of our stride that we need to install our ascender onto the opposite end. Okay, so for our knee ascender, we need to work out how high we want our ascender to sit. So when we think about it, we've got a foot ascender on one foot, so we need to work out how high we're going to step with this so that it doesn't come into contact with this. And then we also need to work out that when we lift the knee ascender foot, that it doesn't crash into our main climbing system at the same time. So there's a little bit of a happy balance we need to work out, and it's different obviously for each person. So the way we're going to work this out is we're going to take the piece of Dyneema which we have spliced up one side of it, and this is going to clip onto the foot loop that we're running. Now what we're going to do is we're going to thread the rest of this cord through our ascender, in this case a crawl, to work out what distance we're going to want this, and then we're going to mark it. So if I step up to this point with my right foot, that doesn't come into contact with this, and then if I step up with this foot to that point, that looks like it's going to crash into like my main climbing system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce this height down a fraction. So if I step up, that doesn't come into contact with the knee ascender, and if I step up on this one, so I've got about a 90-degree bend in my knee, it's still pretty clear of where I think I'll want my climbing device. So that means that I can take some electrical tape now, unclip it from my boot, and use the electrical tape to essentially mark where I want this eye size to be. So this is going to be the length of the tether between this carabiner and the crawl. So now what we're going to do is mark this ready for splicing. Now we've worked out what length this connection cord needs to be, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the measurement down from the eye, obviously making sure we're not cutting the side we've already spliced, and we are going to measure down that 20 times rope diameter from where this splice is, and we're going to cut off this section at this point over here. Put the rest of the cord to one side, and we can untape this because we now know where our measurements are. So just to stop the fraying, I'm going to put a piece of tape around this cover, just stop the end of it fraying, and we can remove the cover from the Dyneema core. And what we're going to do is we're going to now perform that splice. So we're going to do exactly the same, measure down 20 times rope diameter to this point, make a mark, and we're going to double check how big the girth hitch needs to be by tying it onto here. There we go. So I've performed a girth hitch onto the ascender, and I am going to mark the opposite side. Remove this, and we're going to perform the same locking brummel on this cord. So go to the second marking, pinch it, and put half the strands on one side, half the strands on the other. Thread it through using your splicing fid and make it go pop. all the way through so it fully inverts. And now we're going to go to the second marking and do exactly the same. And then feed it back through on itself. Pop it out. And we're going to take this first point, keep inverting it. Like this. So it pulls back through itself. Now go to the second crossover point and do exactly the same. Like so. There we go. And what you'll see is those 2 points will start moving towards each other, and then pull them tight so they bed in. Now, measure down 1 rope diameter, mark that point, and then take your wire fid and bury it all the way down here. Exit at the mark you've just made. Pass the tail into the splicing fid, and we're going to bury this all the way through. And the same as we did last time, for this particular cord, fan out about 10 mil on the end. Cut it off at an angle. And now bury that. To bury this back into the cover, what we're going to do is we're going to utilize some of our whipping twine and one of our whipping needles as well. So take one of your needles, thread a whole load of whipping twine through it, and we're going to pass this through this cover. Okay, and grab the free end. Pass it through our eye, and we're going to do the same again. Excellent. And put a little bit of slack into this tape. To allow the cover to expand at the start. And now what we're doing is we're working the spliced cord back through this cover. There we go. Okay, and we're just retaping this end to give us a clean finish for when we need to whip it. Okay, now what we've got is a splice on one end, covered in the chafe sleeve or the rope cover, and then another splice on the opposite end, which is fully covered. What we're going to do is we're going to whip one side, whip the other, and remove the excess cover. So, take your whipping twine, however you personally like to set up the whipping. You could literally just lock stitch this if you want, but it's just a nicer way to finish it when you properly whip a splice. Awesome. Excellent, so that's the first stage of the whipping, and I'm going to obviously thread on my needle. Grab a sailmaker's palm and some pliers. Okay, there's one side whipped. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to milk all the excess cover to the end, so I know that my eye splice is over there, which means that I need to tape just about this point. Eye splice. Excellent. Cut off the excess cover and then start fraying it down so that you can see where the eye splice is and exactly where you want to do the whipping. So that undoes it all the way down to where the first locking Brummel is. And we're going to cut off this excess cover. And then we're going to whip this and then tidy up this cover on the ends. So now we've got our spliced and whipped eye to eye. What we can do is girth hitch this onto the croll. So take the croll side or whatever ascender you're using. Thread it on like so, and if you've done your measurements right, you should have a really nice, perfectly sized girth hitch which sits tied up against the ascender. Reattach the other carabiner, and there we go. That is the biggest part of this job done. Now what we're going to do is take our shock cord, our elastic, and attach it to the top. For this section, what we're going to do is we're going to start by taking our shock cord and we're going to tie a double fisherman's on, as a termination point onto the ascender. Like so, and leave enough tail on this because this has a habit of creeping. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my DMM accessory, but this is the one with the corner trap, and I'm going to fit it onto whatever chest harness it is that you're using. I'm obviously running the Audax, so I'm going to thread it through here. Now I'm going to go back down to the croll and I'm going to pass this through, which means that we've added like double the amount of elastic into the system. And I'm actually going to go back up through the accessory biner again. And then I'm going to terminate it again back down on here. So what I'm going to do is, instead of tying a full double fisherman's, I'm literally going to pass it through and do a couple of half hitches just to temporarily position it. Like that. And now we can go to the tree, to our SRT line, and start working out what height we need this to be. Okay, so I've clipped onto my climbing device, and in this case it's a Taslove 3. I've clipped onto my chest harness as well, so my Audax, which is going to be progressing the device up, and I've got my foot ascender on, and I've just loosely clipped the knee ascender out of the way with a double fisherman's on one side of the elastic, but just a couple of overhands on the other side so that I can quickly and easily adjust it. Now, take up your weight as you normally would do in your climbing device. Pop your foot ascender on and your chest tether, and just take a couple of steps up and attach your knee ascender to your foot loop as you normally would do, and pop it onto the rope. Now what we're going to do is we're going to test to see if our steps progress nicely, if I get enough height with them. So left foot, I get about 90-degree bend, great. Right foot, 90-degree. Okay, that feels pretty comfortable. Which means that this length is good, and I can knot off the elastic at that length. Okay then, so with this knee ascender, I was getting a nice right angled bend in my knee, and there was enough tension in the elastic for me to take that step, and I was getting a nice right angled bend in my right leg without it crashing into the bottom of this ascender. If there was too much tension on this and I couldn't get full length on my step, I'd obviously extend the elastic on here, and if when I stepped up I wasn't getting the full right angle bend in my knee, I could obviously take a bit more tension in the elastic. But where I've tied an overhand as a temporary knot, that's sitting about right, so I'll mark that point and then I'll tie it off with a double fisherman's instead. Okay, so we're back on the workbench, and what we have is our ascender with the right amount of elastic on it. And on the one side where there was just an overhand knot tied, I'm going to take a white pen and mark where I need that knot to be on the ascender. And I'm going to undo the temporary knot and just line up all of these shock cord lines nicely. Pass it back through the ascender to where the mark is, and I'm going to tie a double fisherman's at this point now. One rep, two rep. Okay, and there we have it. So what we've done is we have, on the bottom end of the knee ascender, spliced a girth hitched locking brummel on one side, and then spliced another girth hitched locking brummel on the other onto the ascender. And then what we've done is we have terminated the shock cord on one side with a double fisherman's, threaded it up through this accessory biner with the corner trap, back down through the ascender, back up through the accessory biner, and terminated it back down on the ascender, which means it gives us a lot more elastic in the system, which is nice. And for me, this is a fantastic system because it clips just onto whatever chest harness it is that you're running. For me, the Audax system, but if you're running another chest harness with like a central attachment point, it can clip onto there. And this system packs down really nice and compact. And for me, I like just popping it into a pouch like this. Oh. So it sits nice and out the way until I need it, and then I can literally, if I want to, leave it connected up here and then pull out the whole knee ascender. So if I want to leave it connected, I can clip this up here, roll up the knee ascender, pop it all into this pocket. There we go. So I can leave it connected, and then as soon as I want it, I can just unzip this pouch and clip it onto my foot loop. If you want to learn more about how to climb SRT with a knee ascender, click this video up here. And if you want to see more climbing related contents, click down here.